Right now, you're holding on to something that's quietly costing you everything. A project you should have killed months ago. A skill you've outgrown, but keep leaning on because it's the one thing you're already good at. The moment something becomes yours, your brain inflates its worth and you defend the inflated price like it's the truth. By the end of this, you'll see exactly how that glitch runs your decisions and how to switch it off when it matters most. Here's how the glitch was caught. Researchers handed half a room a plain coffee mug and asked, "What would you sell it for?" The other half held nothing and got asked, "What would you pay?" Same mug, same room. The owners wanted roughly twice what the buyers would offer. They'd owned the thing for about 90 seconds. 90 seconds of ownership doubled the price in their heads. Economists call it the endowment effect. And once you see it, you can't unsee it running your whole life. Think about what that means for the stuff you've owned for years. The half-finished business, the friend group that drains you, the version of yourself you decided on at 19 and never updated. If a mug you held for a minute warps your judgment that badly, what's a decade of ownership doing to your ability to walk away from things that no longer serve you? This is where it gets personal, because the most expensive thing you own isn't a mug or a car or even your time. It's your current identity. You've built a story about who you are, the person who codes but can't sell, the one who's not a numbers person, the disciplined one or the chaotic creative one. You picked up these labels somewhere and now you guard them like family heirlooms because they're yours. Letting one go feels like a small death. So you keep paying rent on an identity that's holding you in place. Watch how this plays out with money you've already spent. You buy a course, a camera, a year-long gym membership. The cash is gone the second the payment clears. Yet you keep grinding through the boring course you hate because quitting feels like admitting the purchase was a mistake. The honest move is to ask one cold question. Knowing what I know now, would I buy this again today? If the answer is no, you're feeding a corpse. That question stings. Good. Friction is where the growth lives. But owning the question isn't enough because the bias has a sneakier form and it hides inside your wins. Say you launched something a year ago. It got you your first 100 customers, your first real money, your first proof you weren't crazy for trying. You love that thing, and that love is exactly the problem. The market has moved, your skills have moved, there's a better swing in front of you. The old project sits there, demanding your hours because it's yours and it worked once. So you keep watering a plant that already gave you its fruit, while the better seed waits in your pocket. There's a name for the people who escape this trap, and it's worth borrowing their trick. Investors who consistently win run a rule in their head. If I weren't already holding this stock, would I buy it at today's price? If the answer is no, they sell. Cold. Mechanical. The genius is that the rule strips out ownership entirely. It forces you to value the thing for what it'll do tomorrow, instead of the history you share with it. Now, turn that lens on your own life. The relationship, the city you live in, the niche you chose, the body you've been dragging around, the daily routines you never questioned. If you woke up tomorrow with none of it and could start clean, even logging your habits somewhere like Hone to see which ones you'd genuinely rebuild, link in the description, what would make the cut? Sit with the gap between that answer and your current reality. That gap is the tax the ownership bias has been charging you, quietly, for years. Let me steelman the other side, because it deserves it. Loyalty matters. Grit matters. Half the world quits good things 1 inch before they pay off. And would I buy this again can become a coward's excuse to bail every time something gets hard. That's real. So here's the line that separates the two. Quitting from boredom is fear wearing a smart disguise. Releasing something after honest evaluation, because the math changed, is strategy. The test is whether it's still the best use of the one life you've got. And that distinction is the whole game. You can feel the difference, if you're honest. The thing you're scared to quit because the work got heavy still has a pull toward it, a forward lean. The thing you're scared to quit purely because it's yours has gone flat. You're defending it out of habit, the way you'd defend a losing bet at a poker table, because you've already pushed chips in. Learn to read that flatness. It's information. Here's the part nobody tells you. The ownership bias doesn't only track you in the past. It actively blinds you to the future. Because you overvalue what you hold, you systematically undervalue what you could have instead. The new skill feels like too much effort because your current skill feels worth more than it is. The pivot feels reckless because your current path feels safer than it is. The bias is a fog in front of you, making every alternative look smaller and grayer than your familiar overpriced now. So how do you cut through fog you can't even see? You make ownership temporary on purpose. Treat everything you have as borrowed, on a lease you renew by choice, instead of by default. Your skills, your projects, your beliefs about yourself, all of it rented, all of it up for renewal. Once a quarter, sit down and renew the lease deliberately. Why am I still building this? Why am I still being this person? If you can't write a reason that would convince a stranger, you found something to release. A founder I know does this with a single document. Every 3 months, she lists everything eating her time and rates each one. Would I start this today? Yes or no? The no's get a date to end. She told me the first round was brutal, that she cut a podcast she'd poured 2 years into and felt sick for a week. 6 months later, it was the best decision of her year because it freed the hours for the thing actually growing. You don't need her exact system. You need her willingness to put a price on your own attachments and read it out loud. There's a deeper reason this matters more for you than for anyone climbing a fixed ladder. When someone else owns your path, they tell you when to move. A boss reorganizes the team, a company shuts a department, and the decision to let go gets made for you. You don't have that. Nobody is going to walk in and retire your dead project, fire you from the skill you've outgrown, or break up with the identity that's keeping you small. The freedom you want is also the trap. Every renewal is yours to sign, and the default, the thing that happens when you do nothing, is that you keep everything forever and pay for all of it. Watch how it shows up in the smallest places. The domain name you registered for an idea you abandoned, still auto-renewing every year because canceling it feels like burying a dream. The follower count on a platform you secretly hate, that you won't leave because the number is yours, and starting from zero somewhere better feels like loss. The skill you spent 2 years mastering that the world is quietly automating, that you keep sharpening because sunk effort feels like a reason. None of these are huge on their own. Stacked together, they're a life run by inertia, dressed up as commitment. And inertia is the real enemy here, more than fear. Fear at least announces itself. Inertia just lets the lease auto-renew while you look the other way. So picture the opposite, a version of you that audits the whole stack on a schedule, that treats attachment as a cost instead of a virtue, that can name the 3 things actually worth your next year, and ruthlessly compost the rest. That person moves faster than everyone around them, not because they work harder, but because they're not dragging a decade of overpriced baggage behind every decision. They travel light. Light is fast. Start small this week. Pick one thing you've been carrying out of pure ownership. A subscription, a side project, a belief like, I'm just bad at this. Run the test. Would you take it on today? Fresh, at full price, knowing what you know? Let the answer be honest, even when it's inconvenient. Especially then, and expect the resistance, because it's coming. The second you consider releasing something, your mind floods with reasons to keep it. All the hours you've sunk, what people will think, the story you'd have to rewrite about who you are. Every one of those reasons is the bias defending its turf. dressing up a flat asset in borrowed prestige. The hours are already spent whether you keep going or not. The opinion of someone watching from the cheap seats was never the point. Notice the flood, name it for what it is, and decide anyway. Now zoom back to that mug. The people in that study weren't stupid, and neither are you. Their brains did what every human brain does. It confused having something with the thing being valuable. That's the default setting we all ship with. The difference between the people who build a life that's genuinely theirs and the ones who stay stuck comes down to one habit. They learn to question the price tag their own mind slaps on everything they touch. You overvalue your current self because it's the only self you've ever owned. But the self you could become is sitting right there, unowned, underpriced, waiting for you to stop guarding the old one long enough to reach it. So here's your move. Stop asking what you'd lose by letting go. Start asking what you'd choose if your hands were empty. Then go make them empty, one honest cut at a time, until everything you carry forward is there because you'd pick it again today, instead of because you happened to grab it yesterday. The mug was never worth what they thought. Neither is the version of you that you're too scared to outgrow. Put it down, go pick up something better.